Hey everybody, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, you know who it is, and you are about to listen to the latest episode of the Needle Drop Podcast. Cool? It features Connecticut rapper Apathy. We had a great conversation. You're about to hear it, but before we get into it, a few things I gotta say. If you want to support this podcast, you can have it delivered to your email inbox for a small monthly fee. The link is down there in the description box to our support page. You can also grab a classic review, maybe some merch is over there. You can also support me, the show, the website by using our Amazon Associates link. All you got to do if you live in the US is click on that link. If you want to buy something on Amazon, buy something you were going to buy anyway. We get some kickback from that. It doesn't add to the overall price of what you were going to buy. It's simple, it's easy, it's a couple extra clicks. Also, if you want to support this podcast, like this video, you can share it with somebody. You could just continue watching it on YouTube. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. The link for that is down there in the description too. We backlog all the older episodes over there. If you want to be up to date with the podcast, follow this YouTube channel, which you already are, obviously. And as I said, do that monthly subscription fee. It's going to be sent to your email inbox for the next month, every single week. Ba-bam! And that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a good one. Enjoy. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, you know who it is. And this is the latest episode of the Needle Drop Podcast. Thank you for listening. And in this episode, we're not talking with anybody over the phone or over Skype or live in person. I've been invited to the personal studio of Connecticut rapper and producer Apathy. Hey, dude.
The Danger Room. Welcome.
This is the Danger Room.
Yeah, welcome to the Danger Room, man. Good to have you here.
Literally coming into the door, there was signage on the glass that said the Danger Room.
Yo, I thought you just wanted to hang out when you said you were coming to the spot. And then at the last minute, you dropped the bomb on me that we're doing an interview. I was like, all right, cool. But I thought you were coming to chill.
Listen, music is my work now, you know? True. So it, like, you got to take advantage and just kind of, you know, make a moment of every
I'm with
time.
it. I'm 1,000% with it.
But hey, you know, even though this is an interview, it's still going to be casual. It's still going to be talkative.
We're hanging out.
Yeah, we're hanging out.
Swapping vegan recipes.
And you've been showing me some records from all these projects you got coming up.
Yeah, too many. I got too many projects.
So the last full-length commercial project you came out with was Connecticut Casual.
Yeah,
correct?
full-length. Yep.
Full-length commercial project.
Yep.
Have you dropped anything since then in terms of like a mixtape? I think you dropped some stuff.
I dropped a couple things. I dropped a joint called The Black Lodge, which is kind of like in my bootleg series.
Yes.
Which is just a compilation.
And there were a lot of tracks on that.
Yeah, it was a ton of tracks. I forget how many exactly were on there, but it was a lot. It was like 40 something. But then I also dropped an EP, which was the follow-up to Connecticut Casual, Weekend at the Cape.
Yep. And then you had a collaborative release with Demigods as well, didn't you?
Demigods was a while ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Army of the Pharaohs,
yes, okay, yeah, that was the
Army
latest
of the
thing.
Pharaohs.
Yes.
We dropped 2 Army of the Pharaohs albums.
Yeah, yes, you did.
In 1 year, which was crazy. and after we dropped the second one, kids are like, yo, like a month later, yo, when's the next one? Not even a month later, like weeks later. Kids are like, yo, when's the next one coming? It's like, yo, can we breathe? Holy shit. Can I curse on this?
Yeah, you can curse.
Okay, good. Holy
curse all
shit.
you want. It's on the internet. We're on the internet, so it's not a big deal.
Word up.
Yeah, we're not curse free. So you keep it pretty prolific over here in New London. I mean, it seems like this is a spot where you can just really focus on what you're doing and constantly drop something different, always be working on something else, and you're kind of within a ride's distance to a lot of the other New York and East Coast artists that you collaborate with frequently.
You know what? Yeah, I'm definitely in close proximity to these guys, but I don't do anything like in person anymore. We do everything through the mail. You know, like a lot of fans have this image of us getting together, going to a basement studio, putting our hoods on,
12 guys,
weed, sitting around hanging out with each other. Now it's just like, we'll text each other and be like, yo, you get a chance to do that verse for me? And it'll be like, oh, yeah, this weekend I got you. You know what I'm saying? Because we're all old ass men and we're all super busy and we're all working on so many things, and technology is a lot of us that the ability to do it like that, to do it a little bit easier. It's a little more of a convenience.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that a lot of the people that you work with have sort of studio setups similar to what you have over here. I mean, you have a sound booth over here. You've got like a little production suite in front of you. In the other room, you've got like kind of a small lounge. I mean, it's about 3 or 4 different rooms, but there's soundproofing. There's tons of music everywhere. Seems like there's a ton of equipment that I would love to just spend the day down here just playing with.
Yeah,
just you not here interrupting my creative process. Just not
you and Cal going in.
Yeah, just me and Cal going in, working on the next mixtape, dude.
Word up. I got to get a beat on there.
So give me a bit of a taster, and going deeper into the interview, we'll play a few clips that I know you're going to give me when this interview's over. Give us a bit of an idea and a taster of some of what you're going to be dropping over the next year or so, because from what you've been telling me, you've got a lot recorded and you're sort of figuring out how to put it together and release it, and how often to put it out. How do you space everything out,
Well, one album that is probably going to be my biggest album of the year, and this is probably going to be my biggest album since Honky Kong, is called The Widow's Son. And it's just steeped in heavy esoteric sciences and metaphysics and hardcore rap and, like tons of punchlines. It's definitely my dopest album lyrically, and beat-wise it's super hard. And it's definitely what my hardcore fan base wants. And I was working on that, and it was pretty much all done, but then I realized there was a couple key guest appearances that I wanted to get who were taking a little bit longer than usual, but they assured me that they're down. So I want this album to be perfect, and I want it to be the way it is. So I'm putting it on hold for a minute. And because I was putting it on hold, I was like, well, damn, I don't want to just leave them dry for months and months and months and months. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a little EP. Then I started to work on the EP, and as usual with the way I am, I start to work on something and I OD and I have Tupac work ethic, so all of a sudden it became another album. And so that's where this album, Handshakes with Snakes, which is coming out next, came from. So the next album that I'm dropping is called Handshakes with Snakes, and that album was created to kind of tide fans over until The Widow's Son dropped. But the Handshakes with Snakes exceeded my expectations. I was like, damn, this album is really dope. I thought it was going to be like, a crappy free mixtape or something like that, or the EP or something like that. But then all of a sudden it took on a life of its own, and I was like, this is crazy.
Tell me a little bit about the Apathy fan base and sort of how you interact with them, and how do you keep in touch with them? I mean, are these fans, are these listeners that you've kind of slowly like grown, kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill as you've released one release after another? Are they mostly old heads who remember you from a lot of your 2000s output, or are there new younger listeners who are kind of jumping onto the bandwagon too, because a lot of the old school jazz rap and hardcore hip hop vibes that you sort of pull from, that 90s stuff specifically, it sort of seems like it's come back around again. It's become has become relevant because a lot of those older records that you have hanging up on the wall in this room, because this is very much like a house of the holy.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of that stuff has now become classic, and now that's given younger listeners kind of a chance to go back and re-critique and recontextualize a lot of that stuff, and see it through a different lens.
I feel like all three of those that you mentioned are I'm lucky enough to have as a fan base. I have the older heads who got into our music during the 90s boom, the late 90s indie boom, and who've rocked with us this whole time. I got a whole bunch of fans who've been there since, I got a whole bunch of day oneers. And then there's been a whole bunch of younger kids. And actually, there's been a few things. There's been our affiliation with Vinny Paz and Jedi Mind Tricks, where we've absorbed his fan base through just being family. You know what I'm saying? And doing Army.
And his fan base is really active. Active. They love him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like diehard cult status. And then also, I was lucky enough to be working with Mike Shinoda and Styles of Beyond. And when they did the Fort Minor project, Mike gave me a lot of love and put me on a lot of stuff and put self-titled on a lot of stuff. So we absorbed a lot of those fans. And then there's the newer, younger fans. So it's crazy to me how I keep getting young fans, and I keep meeting these kids who are like 13, 14, and a bugged out thing. I don't know how prevalent it is in my fan base, but a crazy thing is a lot of young kids will come up to me and be like, yo, my dad's a really big fan of yours.
Sure.
Or my stepdad's a really big fan of yours. And I'm like, yo, how old is he? And they'll be like, he's 36, which is my age, you know. He's this, and it just blows my mind that's happening. So, and like you said, there's definitely there's a renaissance period going on where it's flashing back to the classics. Like Joey Badass in the pro era had a ton to do with that. Then you guys got guys like your old Droog, who's bringing back that old feel.
And he just came out with a new song that was really good.
Times Square one?
Yeah. That old music video.
The video's incredible.
Yeah, the video was great.
The Elmo suit. Yeah, Droog is one of my favorite rappers easily. He's dope. And a lot of people said, you know, he's got the Nas thing going on, but I think Droog sounds similar to Nas, but hey, man, he's giving me bars that Nas isn't giving me right now. So I want to listen to those bars. You know?
And you are going to have something coming out with him at some point.
Yeah, he's on The Widow's Son. He's on a song produced by Pete Rock, and Pete is on the hook. So it's me and your old Droog on a Pete Rock beat, and it's crazy. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, man, the fans keep getting younger, and they keep staying, and I can't complain about that. I'm super pumped. And as far as reaching out to them and talking to them, you know, I've had a lot of people in the industry who try to be sequestered and cut off and buffered from their fans. And they try to do it to be, you know, cool guy status and all that. But I think a lot of us indie guys are such do-it-yourselfers. We interact with our fans a lot more than the average people. And I always take a lot of time to answer my fans. And sometimes, you know, you get trolls because of that. And it's like, man, fuck you, whatever, keep it moving. But for the most part, I like to discuss things with my fans, my people who are like, yo, your music touched my life. Like it got me through such a tough time, you know, and I drove 6 hours to be at your show and all this shit. Those are the type of people I want to talk to, and, you know, and people who are asking questions and they want to know certain things. But because I've reached out and opened those gates, I also realize that people ask a lot of stupid questions too. And then I'll make a post on my thing, and the first sentence will be, I don't know when my albums are coming out yet, but here's some details on them.
Sure.
And right away, question will be, when are they coming out though? I don't fucking know. I just said that. So it's funny, man. It's a double-edged sword when dealing with the masses and dealing with people and talking to people. It's awesome and it's rewarding, and I love it. And I'm also the type too where at shows, I'll stay an hour after the show and talk to kids, and, you know, I'll be engaged. I'll sit there and talk to your face and keep a conversation with you and sign autographs and take pictures and answer questions and all that shit. You know, I enjoy that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like interaction's important to you, but also you're not like this internet addict. You're not this social media addict. You know, it seems like giving back to your fans is important to you, but simultaneously, you know, we're talking about a totally different ballgame of music promotion from when you were originally coming up. And I imagine kind of, even though the technology in a sense has made creating music easier, sometimes in a way it kind of makes interacting and sort of making sure that you're staying in the forefront of people's minds harder, especially since there's so many people active out there on social media, constantly shoving themselves into other people's faces. And occasionally you've got to remind other people, oh, I'm here too, you know?
It's exhausting. I think keeping up your social media presence is super important nowadays, and that's why I've always tried to stay in the forefront of what was hot. Like, you know, I mean, it didn't really count when Friendster was popping,
sure,
know? But once MySpace started with the artist pages, I got in early on that. My MySpace player had millions of views. You know, it was really starting to crack off. But then I started paying attention to, I always try to stay on with what's going to be the next thing. Like, for example, I remember the day when Evidence from Dilated Peoples told me, was like, yo, you got to download this app and start getting into it. It's called Instagram. And I was like, all right, I don't know what the fuck it is, and you're going to have to tell me what the deal is. But Ev told me that, and it just popped off. You get in, I think the important thing is getting in early. And there's certain things that I'm late to, like I try to keep up with. Like the reason I got a Snapchat is just to
It actually is more Snatch Chat, because that's originally how it started. Because it was just a place for people to share dick pics where they could just disappear after 10 seconds.
That's crazy. But the reason I got the Snapchat and the reason I got Periscope is just to keep, It's funny is I originally got Snapchat to like play little snippets of like music and stuff, but now I just end up putting my daughter on there because she's hilarious. You know what I mean? Little videos of my daughter. But I just try to keep up social media wise. I want them to see what I'm doing. And, this is a thing that I've always tried to beat into Self-Titled's head. Self is my best friend and my music and business partner. He was the best man at my wedding. He's my best friend. And I always try to tell him, like, yo, look, you got to be more engaged. And I finally convinced him to get on Instagram. Man, he hasn't made a fucking post in, like, months. And it's just not him. And I just had to accept it, Sure. So I try. He does a little bit on our Facebook artist page, but it's just not his stilo.
Okay, so obviously there's this pressure to sort of keep up with the internet promotion side of things, but it seems like artistically with where you're at, there's not really any sort of pressure or trends pushing you in any which direction. It seems like this, like you were saying earlier, this renaissance and this re-recognition of how great a lot of those classics 90s hip-hop records were has kind of allowed you to be truer to yourself and to your sound than you've ever been able to before. There's nothing saying that you need to make a record that sounds like the new Future record or something like that. We were talking earlier about sort of auto-tune in hip-hop and how ridiculous it, just the idea would be for you to not only have an opinion on that, but for you to employ that sort of stuff into your records, Yeah. That's not really you. That's not really your sound.
I've been known as the antithesis of. And, when Kanye did the Love Lockdown, I did the funny little diss record there. I love Kanye West. I love a lot of his earlier stuff, but a lot of that auto-tune crap was whack to me. And, I kind of diss that. And it's just not my steez. And it's funny when I make my opinion known on maybe my Facebook page, my Facebook artist page, because it's kind of like preaching to the choir because most of my fans feel the same way. They want classic boom bap. But then you got a couple kids who really get offended and try to roast me for dissing, the newer school, swagged out, trapped out music. But yo, at the end of the day, it's my fucking opinion. What do you care? If I say, yo, this shit is whack, that's not like I'm like waging war on it. I'm just like, yo, like Drake. I don't care for Drake. And kids go crazy when I say that. They're like, what? What do you mean? It's not hip hop? You're saying it's not hip hop? To me, it's not, motherfucker. What do you want? Convince me that I like fucking peanut butter if I don't like peanut butter? Fuck you. You get your own opinion. I don't care. It's crazy.
Well, that's kind of another thing about younger listeners, and this is something that I didn't see a lot of when I was growing up. This was something that I felt was kind of unique to me and a few of like my closest friends, but we were listening to like everything, we were enjoying everything. And it's rare that we run across somebody, the common phrase that people sort of make fun of, like, I listen to everything except rap and country or something like that, like that kind of stuff. But now it seems like everybody's into everything. It seems like the internet has allowed listeners to break down all the cultural barriers that before might have caused a little bit of stigma.
Not just the internet. What's the main culprit, right?
Sure.
The iPod.
Oh, sure.
The iPod. Never have you had such a platform where Metallica and Britney Spears and DMX are all in the same playlist.
Sure.
You could make tapes back in the day or something like that, but the iPod has completely made it so all of your music, like,
it's easy.
Yeah, and now with things like Spotify, like I use Spotify way more than my iPod now, and Spotify's a pain in the ass for artists, but it's convenient and it's fucking dope. Like I have Spotify playlists with, Billy Joel and Christopher Cross and yacht rock, and then I got 90s hip hop, and then I got metal stuff, and I got everything on those. So,
well, I mean, also I think the internet, like I was saying earlier, I think it's kind of gotten rid of not just any kind of stigma that genres used to have, but also kind of stripped away some of the mysticism. I mean, a friend of mine who is big into hip hop comes from, much in the same way, the same kind of taste that you have. He sees a website like Rap Genius as a powerful tool, but also he talks about the idea in a video of his, and I'll try to link it down there in the description box. His name is D-Respect, and he talks about how back in the day, if you really wanted to know a lyric, you had to rewind the tape again and again and again, really listen to it, write Write it down, think about what it meant, try to contextualize and figure out in your head if there was some kind of slang in there that you didn't quite understand. And now sites like Rap Genius could just completely demystify all of that because it just explains it in a really easy fashion. And, you know, as important as it is for an artist like you to probably have lyrics up there, because, I mean, it's for the fans, they're going to interact with it, it gives you more presence. Also, you know, doesn't it kind of, I don't know, ruin the surprise a little bit?
I think it ruins the surprise, and I think it just... I don't know. It definitely gives a different feeling to everything. It's kind of like those sites that put up the samples. Like, not everybody should have access to that, man. Like, it takes away the fun when you
like who lets you know where the samples come from?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like that sucks, man. Like, I get it, but it's just. And now I got kids asking me like they're entitled to it. I'll post up a song and they'll be like, "What is this sample from?" And I'm like, "Fuck you, man! Like, how fucking dare you?" I mean,
for somebody who's older. You know, well, a younger listener might not quite understand that
the etiquette behind
that's a trick of the trade.
Yeah,
that's a secret recipe.
Okay, so for the guys who don't know, the younger listeners, okay, the stigma back when, you know, things were newer in hip hop, when things were in the, you know, the mid '90s, the late '90s, you don't tell people what your samples are. It's a bad look. You know what I'm saying? That's like, you know, somebody coming up to you and being like, "Yo, how much money do you make a year?" It's rude. You just don't ask questions like that. You couldn't just walk up to Preem and be like, "Yo," and say it, and you could maybe be like, "Yo, Preem, would you mind if you told me this?" Maybe, but you know what I'm saying? But you can't just come up and be like, "Yo, Preem, what'd you sample on this?" He'd be like, "Man, fuck you. Like, who are you to ask me that?" Like, that's just, it's an etiquette thing, and I think that's been lost over time, and people now are like, "Oh, so what's the big deal? Who cares?" You know?
Also, it's very much about competition too. You know, and sort of about artistic style.
Yeah.
You know, going back to that very same era of music and hip hop, as well as styles of music like reggae, guys who ran sound systems where people would come out, hundreds and hundreds of people, to party around these sound systems.
They'd wash the labels off their
Exactly.
records.
They'd wash the labels off the records because they didn't want anybody else who ran a sound system or knew somebody who ran a sound system to see those records and know what the records were, so they could basically compete with them.
So I come from that school and that era and that mentality and that feeling, and that was cool. It was a cooler feeling back then, as opposed, you got to admit, no matter who you are and how young you are, knowing everything and demystifying everything is not always awesome, and that's where the whole allegory from the forbidden fruit of knowledge comes from. You know, sometimes it ruins things. Sometimes it sucks when you know too much. You know, and it's a bummer. I remember back in the day how cool. I remember listening to a Naughty by Nature album, wondering how they made things sound like that. And, you know, now that you're older, when I listen to an album and I know exactly how they did everything, it takes away some of the magic. And, you know, it's like when you're young and you believe in Santa Claus, there's a magic there. When that gets taken away from you, it's like, oh, that's a bummer. You know, it would be cool if that did exist. And like you were saying about the lyrics, I remember the first Onyx album. I was fanatical. I mean, I had like black Timbs and black clothes and a bald head when Back the Fuck Up came out. But some of the lyrics, I had no idea what the fuck they were saying. Track a track, black, one, the south and black rising. And I'm like, what the fuck did he just say? I don't care. But, and it's crazy. And, you know, I remember like in 2009, I was out in LA and I was waiting for Ryu. I was in the car waiting for Ryu to come out of like a restaurant or something. And I had listened to Illmatic from my entire from 94 throughout my life since then, fanatically all the time, okay? In 2009 though, I'm sitting in a driveway or something in a restaurant waiting for Ryu to come out. And for the first time it clicked, one of those things that Nas said that I never understood what he said, where he said, heard a few chicks scream. I heard a few chicks scream, arms shook, couldn't look, when he's talking on New York State of Mind. But when I was young, for some reason, I thought he said murder future extreme. I didn't know if that was like some 5%er slang or something like that. But then all of a sudden it just clicked. And it was so cool for me to come to that by myself. You know what I'm saying? Not read it online or anything like that. And I was like, oh shit, that's what he said. So that whole thing is cool, where, you know, you don't rely heavily on just having it all spelled out for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the idea of coming back to a record that every single time you listen to it, you hear something new, you learn something different about it. Yep. So for someone like you, and I know that you have these new projects coming out this year, and we'll talk a little bit about those now. How does someone like you in this day and age where sites like, Who Sampled are out there. Sites like Rap Genius are out there. There are tons of videos out there that sort of spell out to a T the basics of hip hop production and sort of, what equipment to buy and who uses what and all that and who uses what trick. How do you sort of maintain that mysticism in this day and age?
I don't know. I don't know that you can. I mean, I think that we just do our best. We try to find, samples that are rare or samples that are painfully obvious and flip it in a way like, when I flipped for the Martha Moxley shit.
Sure.
And, things that are painfully obvious and you freak it in a...
Yeah, everybody wants to know what you're sampling, but if they realize what the sample is, if they know the sample is already off the bat, it's almost as if that disappoints them in a really weird way.
Yeah.
Like, that was too obvious of a sample.
Well,
I mean, did the song work or did the song not work?
It worked. It worked great. People loved it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
People loved it, as far as the Martha Moxley shit, people either loved it or thought it was corny that I was sampling something so obvious. But most people just flat out loved it. But with the newer project that I released, Weekend at the Cape, I had this song called Block Island Sound with Locksmith on it. And I sampled Fraggle Rock theme music, right? Okay. And I thought this was a hit. I thought I knocked it out the park. I was like, people are going to lose their minds when they hear this. And I played it for certain people before it released. And, people around my age. And people were like, oh, shit, that's Fraggle Rock. And they were bugging out. But then I started seeing on sites and on YouTube comments, people were like, yo, this beat's whack. And then I'm like, what? How are you going to say it's whack? But then I realized it's young kids who had never seen Fraggle Rock. So they don't know what the fuck that is. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they have no frame of reference.
You need to sample something that's nostalgic for them.
Yeah, like something newer, like Power Rangers or some shit like that.
Or sample the SpongeBob theme song or something.
Yeah, like something newer. I was already fucking and getting my dick sucked, but it's like some cartoon that came out when I was like 24 or something like that. SpongeBob.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about these projects that you're going to release. What's the next album you're going to put out? You talked about it a little bit. What can people sort of expect from the sound from the record? What are some of the first songs we're going to hear? And if you could, give us a clip too, we'll play one. Yeah,
for sure. The next, matter of fact, I'll give you a clip for the first joint, which is called Attention Deficit Disorder. And it's a faster paced joint, and it's just over a dope sample, and it's just me rapping kind of fast. And I don't know, I found the sample and I just freaked it and I fell in love with the record. So it's not really that deep. It's just kind of like some spit shit and talking shit. But the album is super dope, man. Like I said, I started to just throw it together, and then it took on a life of its own. And I was gonna make it super smooth and jazzy, but it ended up being hard too. It's got a lot of hard stuff and a lot of really dope shit. I got guest appearances from Twista on there. I got Sick Jackin' and Be Real. I got Bun B on there. I got Self is. I'm waiting on Self to send me his fucking verse. Because he's my best friend, he's always takes the longest because he's like, well, yo,
you'll wait forever.
Yeah. He's like, not only will I wait forever, but he knows. See, Self and I put our albums out together. Like Self goes and does the actual manufacturing of the album. So he knows when my albums are done because he's the one who turns them into the manufacturing company. So I'll be like, yo, give me that verse. And he's like, are you done with the album yet? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, I'll wait till your last second. So he waits till the last second, motherfucker. And, but I got a lot of dope guest appearances on there. I got Raz Kaz, OC. I got this newer dude from New Britain area named Marvelous, who's dope. I got Blackistan on there. I got some local singers from around the way. I got this dude who was all over Connecticut Casual, Kappa Gamma, who sang on there. This girl Maria Grazia sings on there. It's dope. I like to use a lot of people, a lot of local heads who are talented, who people may not have heard. And sometimes people give me shit about that. They'll be like, yo, you use more just the people from AOTP. Yeah, man, but there's a lot of fucking talented people who need to be heard too. There's a lot of unknown people who really should get out there, So.
And I mean, you're talking about Twista and Bun B being on the record. I mean, it seems like you've already kind of reached your big name quota on the record,
the Twista's verse is so insane. It's a song called Moses, and I did my best to do my double time. I kind of killed it at double time, but at the end of the day, I knew Twista was gonna fucking body me on it. It's not like a surprise, you know what I'm saying? Like you can't be like, yo, I'm gonna go play ball with Michael Jordan, and I wonder if he's gonna put up more points than me. Yeah, he's gonna fucking destroy you because Twista's the Michael Jordan of double time shit. Him and Chip Fu, So I knew that was gonna happen, but it's an incredible song, man. I did all the production on this album, and I really dig it. It's dope. the joint with Be Real and Sick Jack and is like some real grimy, creepy, like trip down to Mexico, almost like a Breaking Bad feel, to it, and it's really bugged out.
Lyrically, sonically, are there any sort of concepts or themes that kind of pull all the songs together? Because I know, especially recently, putting out conceptual projects seems like it's really important to you.
Well, you know what? I'm taking a break from that. Widow's Son is a little more. Widow's Son is a light theme. It's a very light theme with the whole dark vibe and the whole, it's got like Masonic themes and esoteric themes and all that. But as far as this Handshakes with Snakes, there's nothing really tying it together. There's, I try to make all my albums flow together well, but I'm not going to return back to the concept until later on in the winter when my group project with OC drops. And that group is called Perestroika. And that's got the theme of that whole album is like how Wu-Tang is with Kung Fu, our shit is like Cold War, Russian, Soviet Union feel to it. Mm-hmm. So that's the whole theme of our shit.
That's an interesting concept to go into it.
It's hard, man. It's dope. It's a dope album. It's really, really incredible. Like when O and I first started, O and I knew we wanted to do the group together, and it's crazy, man, because O is like my brother now. O came up to Connecticut. He chills with me. He calls my daughter his little niece, and bought her clothes when she was born and all that shit. And it's funny to see certain suckers and trolls on the internet who are like, oh yeah, Apathy got OC because he paid him or he got that money, so he's paying. That's not how it is at all, man. O is working with me because we carry on the torch for the next generation, and O is feeling what I'm doing. So him and I did this album together, and at first when we started out, I was like, well, I don't know what we should do. Should we give it like a real jazzy feel, kind of like the Jewels album mixed with my first album, Eastern Philosophy, and but then it took a different life form when we made one song called Gorbachev, and it just got crazy after that. We scrapped, we didn't scrap, but we scrapped a lot of the beats, took the lyrics we had and put them over newer beats and put other little samples, just like how RZA did with little Kung Fu things. I got little things from the Cold War and all that, and it's an intriguing album. It's really an ill fucking album the way I'm piecing it together.
Just so many questions I want to ask, just like so many interesting things that I think I'm learning about your creative process as you're explaining the records to me. With all this new technology, and I know you've been doing a lot more production on your own projects, yeah. Recently. To you, sort of what? I guess my question is, a lot of the sounds and styles that you pull from come from an era where the technology to create this music was super rudimentary. Yep. And now, how do you feel like, these computers, these samplers, these keyboards, MIDI, so on and so forth, how does that allow you to sort of take that sound, recreate it, but also push it into something else? What are you able to do with this music that the people who obviously influence you and people who you look up to, people like Primo, people like Pete Rock, what are you doing with this technology that back in the day they weren't able to do? Because it seems like simultaneously there's so much room for you to experiment and do something different, but also this music comes from a place of simplicity. Yeah. Like once you add too much to the recipe, you've just kind of botched it.
Well, I think that, let me say, first of all, I think it was either Alchemist or Jay Zone who said on Twitter, I think it might have been Al said it, that if the Bomb Squad had YouTube back then, it would have been unbelievable. And the amount of what the Bomb Squad accomplished, they're like fucking genius, like Mozart to me, for what they accomplished.
It was so dense.
It was unbelievable, and it all just flowed together in this whole sea of chaos. It was just insanity how they made everything go together, and they had all these little sound bites and just this. It was chaos. It was just absolute chaos that made sense, and it was absolutely incredible. And that's what I'm always chasing. Like when I'm a perfectionist. I've always been a perfectionist, and I'm always chasing the dragon. And what I mean by that is I'm always trying to make a perfect album, and I'm always trying to live up to the expectations of making Ice Cube's Death Certificate. It was Ice Cube and Pooh did that. And, making albums like that, making Wu-Tang 36 Chambers and Nas Illmatic and Only Built for Cuban Links. And even to the point where with all this technology and with all these things that I have, I try to forcefully put errors into my music to replicate that sound, and people don't get that. They try to make shit too clean. But the dopest thing about RZA samples is when they would be chopped off too abruptly at the end, and there'd be like a little clip sound, or something would be blown, a level would be blown, or this would be fucked up, or this would be fat. That's like jazz, man. Jazz is the best when it's imperfect. That's what sucks about music nowadays. When you listen to an old Led Zeppelin album and you listen to what's the song, Immigrant Song, and you hear in the beginning the volume being pumped up on something, and you can hear the air in the room. There's imperfection, and there's perfection in imperfection. You know what I'm saying? That's when music was the best, and that's when music was the dopest. And now it's like when things are so fucking clean and so down to the microscopic level, it just doesn't feel authentic anymore, and there's nothing organic and nothing real about it anymore. I respect somebody who's gonna record their whole album and record it to cassette first to put some air into it and give it a fucked up feel, more than somebody who's got like a Pro Tools set up and all their shit is like, I got certain kids being like, yo, App, are you gonna put your music in Apple lossless? And I'm like, man, fuck all that shit, man. Like, come on, man. I grew up listening to SP 1200s, and when sample rates and bit rates sounded like shit. That's why a lot of the music sounded the way it is, because it was just fucking grimy and dirty. That's what I came from. You want that clean Apple lossless shit? Go buy a fucking Celine Dion album, man. I don't want to hear that shit. I want dirt and grime. Like, why do you want shit sound so pretty? One kid asked me, it was a fan, and he was arguing with me about the quality of some type of music, and I was like, bro, you can't tell if something is... I could play you 2 joints and you would not be able to tell if it was a wave or if it was 192, whatever. And these kids like flew off the handle, and they're like, yes, I could definitely tell. Well, guess what, motherfucker? I stopped sampling off vinyl years ago. I sample off YouTube, motherfuckers. I sample off MP3, and you guys have no fucking clue because you sonically can't hear it. Just like as a human being, you can't see certain shit without a binocular or some assistance. Human ear can only hear so much shit. And I get it. I get there is sound degradation in their shittiness, but I don't get it, man. I don't get where these guys are coming from with wanting to hear shit so fine-tuned, high-def, crystal clear. Save that shit for a fucking Avatar movie or something. I don't know.
One of my favorite things to reference in regards to that is this really great segment they did on the NPR Music website, where they essentially put up one song after another song after another song, and they allowed people to listen to streams of it where they had like a wave, they had a low quality MP3, and they had something else, and people were supposed to pick the most high quality version
Pepsi
of the
taste
3
test
songs.
of it,
Exactly. And so they calculated all the results, and everybody who voted did only slightly better than random.
Wow.
So people trying to pick which one was the best only did slightly better than random.
You can't tell, man. You really can't tell. And, that comes from people regurgitating things that they see stars say. Like they see Neil Young go, oh, I don't want my album to be digital. I don't want my music to be digital. Bro, let me tell you something. All my shit is digital, and it sounds like analog. If you know how the fuck to do it, you know how to do it. Sure. And, that's what it is. I know how to make my shit sound high quality, and I know how to make my shit sound grimy and analog feeling at the same time.
Well, I mean, I think when people talk about sound quality, they're not. I think there are some things they're confused about. I think there are a slew of different things that sort of add up to the idea of sound quality. Some of which don't have to do with other things. For one, there's fidelity, which you can lose on an MP3. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're listening to something that has kind of a tape feel to it, has an analog feel to it. You know, you can record something to tape and have it be low fidelity. You can record something to tape and have it be high fidelity. You know, you can record something digitally and have it be high or low fidelity, but it doesn't have that tape vibe to it. You know, there's a certain sound to an analog record and to a tape record and to, you know, a tape album that I think people recognize those differences, but they think they're sound quality differences when it's really just, you're just really kind of altering the tone of the sound. You know, you're bleeding the sounds together a little bit. You're making it dirtier, you're making it grimier, like you were saying. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're, you know, losing things like, let's say, the dynamics, which if you overuse the compression, you'll completely suck that out of the picture. You know, and the thing about a lot of tapes is that, especially FM radio too, you know, FM compression, you know, there's some songs that sound great on FM radio because it kind of just fattens up everything and it sort of makes all of that bleed together. So, you know, you're talking about fidelity, you're talking about sort of the tones of sound that you get from certain mediums, you're talking about the dynamics in the body of a song due to the compression that's laid onto it, possibly because of the medium that you're listening to on it, or if you've put it into a digital interface, you've maybe put so much or so little compression onto it. You know, a lot of the sound quality from one record to another, especially when it comes to MP3s, you can't necessarily tell because the compression is so high that it's completely sucked a lot of the fidelity out of the track. So, you know, whether it's a high or low quality MP3 or even YouTube, you can barely even tell the difference, especially now that a lot of older albums are sort of being remastered in this way.
Yeah, and they use these high compression presets, and they just kind of use presets and they kind of just blow them out. You know, and that's not a good thing either. That's a horrible thing too. And yeah, man, people, you're right though. People definitely do have a hard time differentiating those elements.
Okay, so this new music project that you have coming up, anything else you sort of want to tell us about it, or do you? I know that you have like a lot of projects under your belt right now. You know, with so much music sort of just kind of waiting to be launched, how do you plan this sort of thing out? You know, I mean, you're not exactly like a Drake, for example, where it seems like there's sort of this pressure on you to always be releasing something every few minutes. You know, yet you are really prolific, but it seems like you're super tedious and super, I guess, picky and methodical about how you release it.
Yep. Well, I think that my initial plan was to have most of these albums out this past year, but like I said, with the guest appearances pushing everything back, and we wanted to give them proper campaigns and proper rollouts, and basically just getting the entire album done and then figuring out what we want to do as far as.
And you're releasing these albums independently?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I mean, you know,
how only is it independent, but here's the thing: a lot of people hire people to do this and to do that, and they have labels. This is me and self. That's it. We'll hire a publicist sometimes, not even every time, but this is me and self. Like, this is it. We do all of our shit from the molecular level, and that comes from the do-it-yourself generation of, like I said before, the late 90s boom, when you see guys like, you know, Jedi Mind Tricks and Immortal Technique and Slug and J-Zone. We all know how to put out records like dudes from the past didn't, because dudes from the past relied on labels with guys who were working up there. We know how to hustle our own shit. We know more about the biz from the molecular level. So basically what I'll do is when I take these projects, and I do everything, man. I come up with the titles, with the sequencing, with I mix everything, I record everything, I do fucking everything. I figure out the artwork. Most of the time when you see my covers, I doodle like a horrible doodle, and I show my artists and I bring it to life. Yeah, I work with this unbelievably talented artist, Chris Murray. I work with my brother Open Mike, who does amazing shit. For Handshakes with Snakes, I worked with this guy named Dave Quiggle, who's this dope artist from LA, who's insane. And I do these little sketches, and I tell them what I want to see, and I send them the crappy sketch, like the Killmatic cover right there with the chick. That was I wish I had the original sketch that I sent to Chris Murray, because it was a joke. It was so bad. And he got that out of it, and he's a fucking unbelievable genius, and he pulled that out of it. So everything we do, like when I did the Honky Kong campaign, I looked at all the dates for that month because we knew we were ready to release in August. And I said, okay, what number will stick with people so they don't forget my album's dropping? I said, okay, well, one of the Tuesdays, because music was dropped on Tuesdays back then. I said, one of the Tuesdays is the 23rd. The number 23 is a really big number. So I made this whole campaign where I took a whole bunch of pictures of Jordan, and I kept, I would erase his name on the back of his jersey and write August, and I kept beating it into kids' heads. And I had this whole slogan, word to the 23rd. So, beat it into people's heads. So we do all of that, man. We really try to just make it so the fans know when it's coming. The fans are excited about it. They hear enough, and they want to support it.
Okay, so you're essentially kind of giving us a bit of a look into what an indie kind of campaign looks like. Yeah. What other things are you kind of taking into account when releasing your record? I mean, obviously you're kind of selling it yourself too. Yeah. How are you making sure that these products are getting to the people that want them, whether it be sort of ordering it somewhere online or sort of going into a record store where I've seen your stuff in record stores too.
Yeah, we still have distribution. We have distribution. We have a pretty major distributor for our digital stuff, which is called The Orchard. And then we have we go through Traffic distribution up in Boston. It used to be called Landspeed. And that gets us into some stores. We don't do like the big stores like Best Buy because those guys make you pay to be in there, and fuck that anyway. Our fans usually buy from us directly. They'll buy bundles, which is doper, and they buy directly from us. And Self has a friend who he hired to help us fulfill our orders. And there's some artists out there who try to do that. They try to like go direct to their fans as far as selling this shit, but then some of the fans are pissed. They're like, yo, you fronted, you didn't send me this. We're crazy methodical about it. Like, we always make sure nobody misses their order, nobody's shit gets lost, nothing like that. If there's any damage, we make sure we take care of our fans, and we'll do bundle packages where now fans love doing this. They want to buy an album, a vinyl, a cassette, a CD, and a t-shirt all together in one, so they get this deal of all this stuff. And that's a huge thing for us, and we'll sell those ourselves, or we'll sell to like sites that we had a great relationship with, like undergroundhiphop.com. Since we were teenagers, we've been down with them. So that's how we basically move everything out and get it to our fans.
Also, is there anything to be said for the fact that you'll drop something new, run into some new listeners with that music, and then all of a sudden, they realize you're a seasoned artist with a large back catalog?
And fine, yeah, sure. That's the ideal situation that we always hope happens, and they're like, oh damn, Apathy's got this and that, and he's got all these albums. So that's a good thing too about iTunes and everything like that, is they go and look for one album and then they see my whole discography. It's a little harder to do with physical and stuff like that, but the digital is always a good thing when they see all the back catalog.
All right, moving on to stuff that's a little more personal now, because even this isn't directly your music, it surely influences your music. I mean, as recently as 8 months ago, you were telling me you're now a dad.
Yep.
And you were telling me how that's sort of impacted your personal life so much, made you a better person. Yeah. You feel like to your core, but has that sort of affected your creative process at all?
Yeah, definitely, because it's like I feel more accountable for shit I said. And, I'll be candid, and he doesn't even know this, but when Esoteric first had his kid, he changed a lot of his shit and a lot of his subject matter. And, just saying even slick, funny punchlines. And me and Self never got that. We're like, yo, why does he care if he says this punchline? But, like, I totally get it now. Like, 1,000%. Like, I had a line on The Widow's Son where I talk about, it was just supposed to be a slick punchline, just talking shit for shock value, like something about trafficking women for sexual profit, and I took that line and I deleted it and I got rid of it because I was like, I have a daughter now, and I'm and that type of shit makes me furious. And before, when I had no point of reference to that, and I had no attachment to that idea, I didn't give a fuck. I was like, oh, that's a horrible thing that happens when you see it on Dateline TV shows, and I feel real bad. But I didn't give a fuck. I just wanted to say some slick shock value shit. But now, I deleted that. I want to be a better person for her, and I want her to see that, her father later on when she's older, see that her father wasn't just some dickhead who said horrible shit too. Like even things like, I grew up saying the word faggot, which I never said it in a homophobic light. I never in my life had anything against gay people, ever. I got gay friends and family members who are gay who I love. And, but we would say faggot to other heteros to make them feel some kind of way. And I went in the newer projects and I deleted any time that I said faggot. And I don't believe in using that word anymore. Another thing, too, is that when I say that word even now in context, you won't hear me say the N-word. If I'm talking about, people using the N-word, I don't say the N-word. If it's in context, I'll say, I don't say the word nigger. I don't say faggot. And I say those words. I don't say a F-word or F-bomb or something like that. So.
Sure. So I guess you're literally sort of looking at the music that you're making and you're thinking, what would this person who I care about, because this is my daughter, this is my son, think if they heard this music? I guess is sort of what's going through your head.
Yeah, for sure. And, and it's also about just, being the change that you want to see, that whole old school saying. And another thing too is that, like I said, I got these 3. I don't like telling people too far in advance because they get confused album wise. But like I was telling you, for the top of 2017, I started working on another album, and it's a lot more personal. And since I had my daughter, I've been inspired. So I'm talking about things in my life. You know what I'm talking about? Like I say in one of my lines something about I'm just praying that my daughter's born head first, because those were things when my wife was pregnant that I was thinking about. I was praying to God that there wasn't going to be any complications, and it was stressing me out, and I was losing sleep over the fact that I hope the pregnancy went smooth. And, people who are about to have a kid can relate to that, and they feel that same stress. So those are things that I'm going to discuss in my music because they're heavily emotional factors that I never felt before. When I was an artist, as life changes, you change as a person, and things that that are profound to you change, and things that are important to me now weren't the same as when I was younger. So,
it seems like there's a lot of interesting kind of personal life changes like this to take note with a lot of hip hop artists out there. Sure. Because hip-hop as a genre, like you were saying earlier, you were talking about these divides between the older fans and the younger fans. I mean, hip-hop is sort of coming to this spot for the first time because, it's aging as a genre. It's come to the point where not only is it as relevant as rock music used to be, like during the Led Zeppelin era, I think, hip-hop is kind of seeing I don't know, kind of its hair metal stage in some aspects.
Yeah, for sure.
You have these like really huge artists who are just nothing about who are just all about flash and that sort of thing. But then you kind of have the underground and the experimental stuff and the I know you've referred to it as sort of the bohemian shit as well.
Yep.
And then sort of in that whole mess, it seems like more old school guys like yourself are kind of seeing room to grow too.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think as far as you say old school too, there's something to be said for tradition that I think that gets lost in hip hop because hip hop is so young. But like when you see a jazz artist who plays like the old guys used to play, nobody is coming to that jazz artist and be like, "Oh damn, man, you playing that saxophone like an old head. Like you're old, man. That shit sound old." And nah, it's traditional.
There's a couple
blues.
People who would do that probably.
That's whack. And there's blues and rock, and it's crazy to me too. I guess that, like a group like Wolf Mother came out with their first album.
Sure.
And I was like, this is dope. This is like old Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. But then it didn't really pop off like that. And it didn't create any type of renaissance.
But there are other groups who similarly kind of have a throwback thing.
Yeah.
Like Jack White.
Jack,
like,
for sure. Jack White is a fucking savant.
Black Keys.
Yeah, Black Keys. Yeah. And my favorite group completely who I put up there as much as I love hip hop, Vampire Weekend.
Sure.
They're so
where's their new album? They haven't come out with an album in a while.
Yeah. The last one with fucking Diane Young and all that was dope, but they're actually kind of taking their time, so I'm wondering if this next one's going to be
they can sort of afford to,
Yeah,
they've kind of got this I think this sweet spot with the indie kids that they don't need to sort of rush to put out their next thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. They kind of have that. They kind of have it like that. And those guys, man, are incredible, man, because they got a huge, like, listening to them, I'll play their shit to somebody even old, and they'll be like, oh, wow, this is like Paul Simon, Peter Gabriel vibe,
Sure.
So,
another thing that's sort of personal to you that has come up on the Grand Leveler, tracks like that off of your Connecticut Casual record. Tell us a little bit about what that song's about and sort of your affiliation with the Freemasons, correct?
Well, yep. Grand Leveler is not really heavy on being about anything. It's kind of like braggadocious, just like a stream of consciousness. It's not poignant and it's not topical. It's kind of just like all over the fucking place. Like, people don't understand that. People think I'm trying to say something crazy. Nah, man, it's just, and the ill shit is that I'm a Freemason, and a lot of that has Masonic themes to it. But a lot of that information that I'm talking about was shit that I learned when I was 14, 15 years old, and I was running around with dudes who were 5% Muslims and Hebrew Israelites back in the day, and Holy Tabernacle Ministry guys like Dr. Malachi York and my early Jedi Mind Tricks days. That's what that shit comes from, and I think Freemasonry is fascinating in its history, but there's no real correlation. And I think, I know for a fact a lot of young guys have the complete wrong idea about Freemasonry. And they feel like once you become a Freemason, you're handed over these secrets, or once you reach a certain degree, you're handed over these secrets. And it's funny and hysterical, but there is no fucking secrets to Freemasonry. Freemasonry started out, and where it got that stigma is back in the day, during times of religious and spiritual persecution. There was nowhere to talk about any of the ideas except for the good book and the Bible, or else you'd be persecuted. You would be ostracized and vilified in your own little community, and you couldn't discuss any ideas other than the God of Abraham, or a Catholic God, or a Christian God. And that out of that was born guys who wanted to talk about the Gnostics and the mystery schools, and they wanted to talk about alchemy and esoteric studies and things like that, and paganism, and just talk about all these things and just review the ideas and look at it and be like, this is interesting, this is fascinating, this is interesting how this culture does it, this is interesting how this culture does it. Let's take some ideas from this culture and use this as an allegory to live your life as a better person. So people take that and they view all the online YouTube videos of all the conspiracy theory shit and all the negative stuff, and they jump out the window with it and just take it as fact, which is crazy to me, because they have no idea who uploads those YouTube videos. They don't know who the real people are who write these books. People are like, yo, you got to look up this book and this topic. Yeah, but who the fuck wrote that book and who put up that video? Oh, well, this guy who does all these videos. Yeah, but do you know anything about him or who the fuck he is? You could be getting disinformation from him too. So a lot of conspiracy theorists, dudes, are idiots to me. And not just because in a defensive way of against the Freemasonry thing is, but because they don't research. I was there too. I read Behold a Pale Horse. I read all these things. I believed these conspiracies. I thought there was going to be microchips in the wrist and shit. I thought 2012 was going to be the fucking end of the world. I thought 2000 was going to be crazy shit popping off too. And all these events come and go and nothing fucking happens. And, I believe that there are groups out there who are greedy corporate entities who want to profit off of certain shit. And I believe 1000% that happens. But I don't think that there's groups sitting around dying to do blood rituals and do satanic things just for the fuck of it, so they can assess some type of power or gain some type of power. That's crazy to me.
It seems like in this era, especially around music, where there's just little to no mysticism around anything, that people are just kind of looking for it somewhere or just making up their own kind of mysticism. Because the idea of a group like the Illuminati sort of controlling everything behind the scenes in terms of what we think and the media we consume and so on and so forth. It seems like that's something that people can kind of gravitate to, you know?
Well, don't get me wrong. I think that at the same time as I don't think it's, well, I know for a fact it's not Freemasons or an Illuminati or anything like that, but I do see and I do believe in a certain dumbing down of the masses, and I do believe that in that regards, the certain powers that be view it as easier to control people, and I believe in certain consumerism and certain entertainment and stuff like that they do view it as they want to control people. And I think that most people are quote unquote sheep, like the conspiracy theorists kids love to say. I think that's true. I think there's something to be said for all of that, but I just think that they're barking up the wrong tree, and I think they get a lot of disinformation about
there's nothing really conspiratorial about it. I mean, a lot of the time it's really all out there in the open, and much of it is only sort of engaged in and created for the sake of just getting another dollar, you know? I mean, that's really all there is to it.
A lot of it is like corporate greed and cutting corners. And when you have these people pump these toxic chemicals into things, they're not doing it like an evil James Bond villain who wants to kill people.
It's not like a Captain Planet plot.
Yeah, not at all. They're not sitting around like, ha ha ha, I will poison this culture. No, they're doing it because they're like, well, shit, how can we cut costs? How can we cut costs in with these items that we have? Well, instead of using real good materials, let's use these shitty ones, and who cares what happens to the people? It's just, for lack of better words, it's the apathy of these corporate companies who don't give a fuck about people or what happens to people or the planet or the environment. They just want to have a good year money-wise, and they want to make a shitload of money, and they cut corners, and they use cheaper things, and they use cheaper chemicals, or they use things that give food a longer shelf life that aren't good for an organic entity like the human body, but they don't care,
So going back to the Freemasonry, though, as we were talking earlier, you're talking about yourself being a rapper who's also a Freemason, and you were saying there's a story there. What exactly is that story, to you? I mean, obviously it's an odd thing, but once you explain it, I'm sure it'll seem probably less weird.
I think the story there is, I was just saying that there's a story as far as an interesting conversation piece.
Sure.
But
obviously the goal
is historically very paranoid of Freemasonry or any of those groups, and as far as me becoming a Freemason, I came up like most of these conspiracy theorist guys did. I grew up studying this shit since 1993. I was 14 years old. Me and my brother Open Mike and all these other dudes, we had all the fucking books. We were crazy. We used to quote all that information. And
so once you take that conspiracy theory and you've kind of demystified it and you've realized that there's nothing really there to it, I mean, a lot of people go through that process. What exactly caused you to take one step further and actually join? Well,
the thing is that what ended up happening was I was in LA one time, and this is when I was still on the fence about Freemasons. And I met this guy, Ryan, and Ryan was talking to me, and I was saying something about Freemasons in almost a negative light, like, oh, well, you don't know what they're doing. And he goes, well, do you know any Freemasons? And I said, nah, I don't know any Freemasons. He goes, well, you do now. I'm a Freemason. And I was like, word? And so him and I started to discuss it, and he was talking to me. And the more that I started to realize what Freemasonry is and what it does and what it's not, I was blown away. I was like, yo, this is exactly what the world needs. The world needs like-minded individuals who want to do positive things. And, people have taken that out of context with me, too. People have said, whoa, you don't have to be a Freemason to do good things. And yeah, you're right, you don't, but it's cool, too. Maybe I want to join a group and do positive things. Freemasons do a lot of things is for the community. They do a lot of things with philanthropy, and they help out a ton, and they do really great stuff. And Freemasonry is all about being a better man and making yourself a better person and helping out your fellow brothers and helping out humanity and society.
Okay, so you're talking about philanthropy and becoming a better person. What exactly is, I mean, obviously the philanthropy thing, that doesn't need to be explained, but the idea of becoming a better person, to what standard do you sort of hold yourself to sort of, measure up and say, okay, I haven't sort of, met that level of goodness or that level of sort of
for me personally,
virtue that I'm trying to.
I can't speak for other guys. I know what you're saying. For me personally, it's holding myself accountable to other guys I know who have a little stronger of a moral compass. Holding myself accountable, not making jokes about fucking around with girls and doing, whatever. It's just kind of holding myself up as a better person and a better man than I was previously, because I have these other guys who are great guys to be around. It's like, when I used to hang around nonstop hood dudes and dudes who are, doing grimier shit, I was a little bit shittier of a person. Through osmosis, I absorbed that and I became that. And it's not even like I'm a difference between a leader and a follower. It's just sometimes you absorb it a little bit. I was always the black sheep of my friends who were shittier as I was growing up. But if you start to hang around people who are a little more positive and have a different type of energy, you absorb that. And through Freemasonry, for me, it was a cool thing. And Freemasonry is not for everybody. I don't say that all dudes need to go off and be Freemasons. That's not true at all. It's just a cool thing. It's a lot of fun. The history is fun that's involved with it, and the degree work is fun. And degrees are things that are meant to propound ideas of morality and the basic tenets of Freemasonry with these elaborate kind of rituals that they do. And the rituals aren't creepy or evil or horrible or anything like that. At the end of the day, when I did all this stuff and I went through it, I was nervous at first because I kept waiting for the ball to drop, the shoe to drop or whatever. And I was like, all right, any minute now they're going to pull out a fucking goat or some blood or something like that. And I'm out of here. I'm fucking out of here if that's the case. I kept waiting for that moment. And then all of a sudden I started seeing these beautiful degrees and these beautiful lectures that they would say, and I'm like, God damn, this type of lecture and this type of speech is so dope and so profound and so beautiful as far as inspiring someone. And I was like, man, I wish more people knew how awesome this was.
It seems a lot like it seems like language, speech. It seems like literature is pretty influential to you on an artistic level.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in high school, I used to run around. I was known for this. I used to always have a dictionary in my backpack, and I would always read the dictionary as far as vocab goes. And then as far as literature, I was really, really heavily into reading when I was younger. And, my mother would just blow through books like crazy and just eat books alive. She was like, one night she would go through something crazy, and my father was into books. My father would always recommend books to me, like you and I were talking about Jonathan Livingston Seagull earlier and books like that. I just bought a beautiful version of Moby Dick, which is a great leather-bound cover, which is my favorite book of all time. I'm obsessed with Moby Dick. And I'm going to bring my daughter up the same way.
Are there any songs on, and we were talking about Jonathan Livingston Seagull, like you were saying, but are there any other tracks, and we'll probably play a clip from that too. Are there any other tracks that you would like to bring up sort of from your forthcoming projects that are sort of directly influenced by a piece of literature like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a song called Pieces of Eight, which is, Pieces of Eight are, it was a form of Spanish currency, which were silver that the pirates back in the day that everyone used to get, and Pieces of Eight was like a big piece of treasure that you would find. And the song Pieces of Eight on this is kind of like an extension of the Connecticut Casual song, Don't Give Up the Ship. Yeah. So Pieces of Eight is a little more on the pirate side, so it's a little more on the Treasure Island feel. That's kind of what I gave it. Like, it has a real Treasure Island swashbuckler, Blackbeard, and I have tons of books which I read about, the pirates, the actual pirates. And
yeah, I mean, well, it's here's a question. So you're talking about being a father, in a way, sort of that influencing you to write certain lyrics or maybe avoid saying certain things because you want to be more accountable for your music and you want to be more accountable for the things that you say. How do you sort of balance that and the idea that you're making this music that is so heavily based on the idea and sort of the archetype of like the outlaw, and the sort of the miscreant, the grimy, the underground,
well, don't get me
the
wrong.
misbehaved.
I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. My shit is not fucking sugar coated now. My music is not watered down. It's not soft. It's not even close. Not even remotely. I'm still talking shit about bashing people's heads in and doing this and that, and like slick ways to say you'll fuck somebody up. And these things aren't meant to be taken literally. It's just like Inspector Deck saying he'll bomb atomically. Sure. He's not going to bomb atomically. He's not going to, Wu-Tang is not going to slice with swords and cut your head off or shoot up your thing with Uzis. It's just not happening. It's just slick ways to saying that you'll outdo somebody. And it's the same thing with us, and I'm not watering that down at all. I'm just not going to say horribly terrible things like trafficking women for sexual profit, and terrible things like that.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to leave it here, man. You were a great interview.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for giving us the music.
Great question.
Thanks for giving us some insight into what you're doing.
Yep.
And thanks for letting me look at your fucking cool-ass studio over here.
We're going to have to show you some cassettes later, show you the real cassette
I'm going to go look at those cassettes over there as soon as I turn this recorder off.
Cool.
Nice talking to you, man.
Absolutely.
I'll take a picture of the
you.
cassettes, too. I'll put it up on Instagram. So
Word.
check out my Instagram. And I'll link to your Twitter. I'll link to your Instagram, your website, your Facebook. And, you'll let everybody know whenever you're going to sort of come out with your next LP.
Appreciate it so much, brother.
All right. Have a good one.
Peace.